Hello and welcome. I'm pleased to welcome all of you so numerously for this talk about Odoo and the public sector. It's been a few months now since I proposed the talk ID to Odoo to come and give a presentation about Odoo and the public sector. And the idea was actually that Odoo and the public sector isn't maybe a combination that you're used to hearing about. Odoo is mainly heard about when we're talking about purely ERP processes, buying stuff, inventory, selling, invoicing, maybe accounting and CRM. But being used as a digital platform for the public sector is maybe something that's a bit unheard of. So that's why I thought it was maybe interesting to come and present our view on the matter to you guys. There's a QR code on the screen already. You can scan it for the Q&A. That will be at the end of the presentation, but of course we'll repeat the QR code at the end of the presentation as well. First of all, the agenda of today, I'll introduce Omicron and the speakers, ourselves of course. We'll go through some characteristics of the public sector. We'll talk about Odoo for the public sector, some key aspects of Odoo out of the box that are already a great fit for the public sector, but of course also some custom developments or setups that we have done at Omicron to be an even better fit for the public sector. And then Dries will take over for the customer case that he will present about Fluvius, which is a great project showing a lot of great aspects or applications of Odoo in a public sector environment. And then, as mentioned before, there will be a Q&A at the end to answer all of your questions, if there would be any, of course. First of all, I'll quickly introduce Omicron. Omicron is a new name in the Odoo partner landscape, but we're already also an Odoo official gold partner. How is that possible? Actually, we were two separate partners before, Nandu and Gumbis, part of the Kronos Group network. But we actually quite recently, it was official since earlier this week, where we joined forces to form Omicron, to combine all of our expertise, the senior expertise that we have built, but also the references and of course the successful implementations that we have done to be able to tackle even bigger and even more complex projects together as Omicron. Omicron coming from Odoo by Kronos, maybe a small word about the Kronos Group. For those who don't know it, the Kronos Group is actually a group of companies, over 600 companies in Belgium, mainly in Flanders, providing services IT related, so going from hosting hardware, but of course also software, ERP, CRM, accounting softwares. And two of those companies were actually providing Odoo services, Nandu and Gumbis. But we joined forces now to form Omicron, to be one partner handling bigger and complex projects. Enough about us. Let's go to the content of the actual presentation, which is the public sector. So maybe a quick definition or a quick introduction. What is the public sector actually? In a nutshell, very easily explained, the public sector is any entities that are partly or completely government owned or funded entities. So usually public sector companies or entities are serving the common good. Can be water or electricity providers, but also schools, cities, nations alike. Of course, the public sector is quite big. Probably it's possible to also categorize further into more detailed categories. But even though the public sector is quite big, we noticed some common characteristics or aspects of the public sector. Often, usually, they have high volume workflows. Imagine a grid operator of the electricity network. There are millions of data points of people connected to the grid. So there's lots of data coming in. If you talk about high volume workflows, it also means that you need a low margin of error. Imagine if you have millions of data coming in every year or every month. If a small percentage of those communications would result in error messages or fails, you have a lot of errors to deal with. So the margin for error is very low in a high volume workflow. There's a big focus on security. Of course, that's nothing new. There's a big focus on security in the private sector as well. But in the public sector, even more, thanks to the sensitive data that is usually part of a public sector project. And of course, the general risk these days of data leakage and general IT security. So a big focus on security. And next to that, the IT infrastructure of those public sector companies. Usually they already have a quite diversified IT landscape. And thanks to the sometimes more rigid structure or rigid culture in public sector companies, they don't easily switch to new tools. So they might stick to the tools that they know, They won't, so you can't experiment maybe as a private and more agile company with new tools to be used, because a new tool would call for a new call for tender, for example, to switch to a new tool. So you need to be able to integrate in an existing IT landscape with your tool. Of course, it's something that's easily done using Odoo, so that's a great fit already. Talking about the fit, of course, Odoo and the public sector, out of the box, Odoo is already quite a good fit for the public sector. First of all, Odoo is quite affordable, which is a big part in the decision making for new tools in public sectors. They usually have fixed budgets over longer periods of time, and the pricing is usually a big part in the points that are awarded during a call for tender project or process. So the affordability of Odoo being the low license fees, the free portal users, for example. The portal functionalities and features is something that is very important in public sector projects, we noticed. But the fact that you have free portal users obviously is a great advantage. Odoo projects are typically a bit faster in implementation than, for example, SAP or Microsoft Dynamics. So both the setup, maintenance, and the licenses are quite affordable for Odoo. The possibility to lock prices for longer periods in the public sector, usually budgets are fixed multiple years in advance, or in those call for tenders, they can demand or require the license pricing to be locked for longer periods of time. Of course, in Odoo, you can have a monthly or a yearly subscription, but you can also lock your pricing for 3 or 5 years if you would need that. So that's a great advantage as well. The hosting options as well, you have quite some flexibility in terms of hosting. You can either be hosted online by the Odoo SH platform, where Odoo handles everything, but in the public sector there may be some requirements, or maybe some entities that require their data to be stored on-premise, or every IT solution to be hosted on-premise. Odoo offers that flexibility as well. It can be hosted on-premise to fit everyone's need. Something that they announced earlier today, or earlier this week, is that the hosting location, if you're a European-based company, all your data and all your backups will be stored in the EU as well. That's something that's talking about data security and all those things. Coming more and more, it was on popular demand actually that people were requesting all of the data, even if you're using Odoo SH and Odoo is handling the hosting of your information, to be hosted only on the EU mainland, let's say. So that's something that's changed quite recently, but it's also a great added value speaking with the public sector. So those are some out-of-the-box actually characteristics of Odoo for the public sector. Of course, we also have some examples made by Obicon in previous projects with the public sector of functionalities that are a great fit or make Odoo an even better fit for the public sector. For example, we extended the portal functionalities a great deal in actually multiple projects, so that the customer portal of Odoo is a great 360-degree overview actually of everything that a public institution and communicating with all of their members or contacts can use that portal. For example, some improved document sharing. For one of our customers, we improved the document sharing via the portal to have a lot more efficient flows. For example, they created a contact with a certain contact type. Automatically, a workspace is created in the document application. Whenever a document is added in that workspace, it's available on the portal for all of their contacts, or for the right contacts, of course. An email notification is sent out automatically as well, so that they are notified of new documents present on the platform, so that the entire workflow is more efficient, is automated for them. We also added some other tiles and functionalities on the platform, for example, the possibility for portal users to create other portal users, so that the portal is more of a self-service tool for them as well. I talked about it in the beginning that there's usually a high volume workflow, so there's a lot happening. If you can automate certain aspects, for example, email communication, or you can automate or delegate perhaps some actions to your portal users, of course, that's a big time saver for everything that needs to happen. I mentioned it before, integration in existing IT landscape is something that we have done as well, and the automation of email communications whenever a new document is added or whenever a help desk ticket is created for specific contacts is also some things that we have done before. Some other examples that we have done in the past are, for example, integration with It's Me. It's Me is a Belgian application that is used to identify people whenever you're accessing a government website. For example, if you want to see your taxes or the pension that you're saving, you can use It's Me to identify yourself on the website. We built an integration for one of our customers so that everyone connecting to the Odoo platform, their own internal employees, but also all of their portal users, need to access or can't just log in with an email and a password, but they have to log in using the It's Me application on their phone or their eID card in an ID reader. Another thing that we handled for another client was role-based access rights. Standard in Odoo, you have a lot of flexibility in the access rights, but it's typically not that intuitive to set up or to maintain. So what we added there is we could define some roles with some access rights defined per role. So you just assign the role to a new contact or to a new user, and automatically they have the right access rights. Imagine if you want to update one of those roles, you have to update it once and not for all users separately. And then, but I have to speed up a bit, some general security and update management improvements that we have done as well. Of course, if you're hosted on Odoo SH, we have some weekly updates, but not all customers, or specifically in the public sector, want to accept those weekly updates automatically. So there are some processes that you can put in place. Of course, if you're hosted on-premise, you need some update management as well to be set up for you. But enough about me. I will now give the word to Dries, who will discuss a bit more in detail one of the cases done by Omicron.
Yeah. Thank you, Lucas. So my name is Dries. I'm the managing partner of Gumbies, which are now together in the Omicron group. So I'm very happy to present you this case. For those who don't know, Fluvius is one of the biggest Belgian network and utilities companies. So they're actually active in the entire city and regions all over Flanders, and they have 6,000 internal employees. So it's quite a big company. The main things that they do is they build, manage, and update the public utility networks. To give you a bit of background, Fluvius uses SAP as their main ERP component. Sadly, we could not switch it up by entirely implementing Odoo yet, but the thing is, what did we do with Odoo at Fluvius? And that is the question that I want to answer in this part of the presentation. So for a bit of history, basically we met on one of the Odoo roadshows, and Fluvius had the following question. They were using some tools within the ecosystem next to SAP, like an Access database, etc., which are reaching end of life or could not be supported enough. And the business had a lot of ideas, a lot of things they wanted to automate, to improve. But it was quite difficult to do that in the older tools, or the tools that were existing. And it was also quite difficult to fit everything into SAP. Mainly because they're also working in the meantime on a migration from SAP version. So there was not enough time, budget in that project to include everything in there. So basically, they needed something quick, powerful, and flexible. And they wanted to tackle a specific business case to start with for a specific department. But she also immediately said, there will be more cases in the future. We have a lot of ideas, a lot of things. So we do not want to go really deep, really specific into a no-coding tool or a low-coding tool, which is only usable for one business case. So they wanted something which could be used out of the box, but also flexible enough to go into, to specify or customize to their specific workflows. So after talking and doing some demos, Odoo was the software that was best suited in this use case. And then we started basically the project, as I said, the first business case. The process of doing that is a bit like our other processes. So we start with an analysis phase to really get the business process and the flows. Then we start by defining the real pain points. In this case, real pain points were, for example, manually booking appointments with clients, email communication that was in shared mailboxes, but not really integrated with, for example, the tools. So there was a lot of searching and digging in through the mailboxes. And then there were also quite some document requests, which, as you can imagine, in mailboxes is always very difficult to manage and to organize. So those were a bit the real pain points that we saw in the first business case. Then we started with implementing an MVP, and then, of course, because we started the project 2 years and a half ago. We are still working on improving, further automating, and setting up new business cases with Odoo. So, about the solution or the business case that we set up, specifically it's about case management. So there are clients from Fluvius that have their own solar installations, and from a certain level of solar generation, it needs to be calibrated, it needs to be checked, you need to deliver the right documents in this entire process. So Fluvius knows this is a correct installation and we can connect it to the grid, basically. What we do that, or how we tackle that in Odoo, is first of all, we have an integration with SAP. So SAP is the core of their ERP. So everything starts in SAP, and in the end, it needs to come back in SAP. The thing is, with Odoo, we tackle the process in between. And there we had a lot of flexibility. So data comes in from SAP, and we do a nightly sync with, I think, between 20 and 30,000 documents or cases that are being synced. We do the creation and also the updates. So certain fields from SAP are updated. We do not touch them, we do not change them in Odoo. But then with other fields that we created in the data model, we can set up a lot of automations. If a certain case comes into a certain stage, we can send out the required emails, we can request the required documents. And we can also update it to the correct file, if the correct stage, if for example all the files are being validated. To do that, we basically expanded the customer portal. I will show you some screenshots in a second, so you can visualize it as well. Because there are a lot of stakeholders. You have, of course, the Fluvius employees, you also have the clients, and you also have the third parties like contractors that need to be in sync of the entire process. To do that, we set up a specific portal view for each of these different stakeholders, so everybody can work centralized as a portal user in Odoo. And this is a great way of working, because you can keep the amount of licenses that you need a bit lower, because not everybody needs a backend license, but in the end you can also give everybody the information they need in a centralized way. And everybody can follow up on what is happening and the changes, etc. Then for the document management specifically, we also included it into the portal. There are always different ways to do things in Odoo, but we wanted to be the portal, to be the central piece of information, of visual, where everybody interacts. And then lastly, we also use the appointments app in Odoo. As I said before, making appointments was always a bit of a hassle. Doing it with email or telephoning, it's always a lot of follow-up. With the appointment app in Odoo, of course, this is more self-service. So clients can, when they are in the right point in the process, they get the button to schedule their own appointments, and everybody is being involved. This is also synced to the Outlook, because in Fluvius, not everybody is working with Odoo. So people can keep working the way they worked for 5 or 10 years before, using their Outlook calendars. To give you a bit of a visual there, we can basically see that the solution on the left side is the portal view, where you can see some basic case information, who is the client, who is the contractor, and then the table you can see are basically the documents that can be requested. So also there we work with templates, so depending on what type of case it is, the documents that are expected are automatically loaded in, and then the client can maybe he needs to download a template. Then he fills it in, he uploads it again, and then Fluvius in the backend can validate it. From the moment it's validated, users or clients cannot change it, of course, but they also have all their documentation in one place. And of course, all the communication history is centralized in the chatter. Then at the top right, you can see the list view is the portal view of the contractors. So they see, the main point for them is they can also follow up all their clients' cases. It's not case by case that they work. Sometimes one contractor has 100 client cases with Fluvius. So there they see a list and overview of all their cases. So for them, it's also a huge win in efficiency. And then at the bottom right, you can see the appointments app in Odoo. Another view, top left, is the Kanban view of the project management. So here are all the files in the different stages, of course, with the actions that are being used, the chatter. So we have a lot of basic, out-of-the-box Odoo components that we use, but we specify it a bit to fit the specific business flow of Fluvius. And at the bottom right, you can see the agenda, the calendar, which is then being synced to Outlook. what's for me the nice point in this story with Fluvius, that is they do not see Odoo as purely an ERP or as a direct competitor for SAP. They see Odoo as a platform for business acceleration. That means Odoo, we use it more as a framework instead of an ERP. Not everything needs to be connected, not everything needs to be integrated into Odoo. We basically use it as a tool, as a framework where business can pitch their ideas. We can work it out very quickly as a case to see if it works in a proof of concept, and then when it works, when it is validated also by the internal IT teams, we set up the necessary integrations, we can use it in Odoo. The vision of Fluvius is not to keep it into Odoo until the end of time. It's more like, okay, we use Odoo as a temporary solution where we can be very flexible with what we do and how we do it, but it is integrated into the entire infrastructure of Fluvius. So that's a bit the story that I wanted to bring, where we see that this is a really nice case. Fluvius is really happy with this way of working. And also maybe to give you a bit of a note, it started as Odoo being a separate entity software platform for Fluvius. But as time goes on and we do more and more cases, we also become more and more integrated into the IT infrastructure, the way of working of Fluvius, and I think that's a very important step to take as well with Odoo and as a partner. For a couple of reasons. Of course, security-wise, it's much easier and better to set everything up correctly if everything is on the same hosting, for example, in the same environment, into the same architecture. There's a lot less risk, but also in the daily operations. We now have weekly calls with the Fluvius development teams to also work on their tools, on their systems, so they also have control and ownership about the Odoo application or solutions that we built. So that is, for me, very important to also evolve into that way of working and not keep it as something very separate, but really embrace the capabilities and maybe also the challenges that Odoo sometimes bring, but really own it as an organization in itself. That was a bit the story that we wanted to bring. I hope it was a bit clear, and we still have some time for the Q&A, so feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the speech. So we have two questions. The first one is, do you think the standard security Odoo offers is qualitative enough for sensitive project in the public sector?
I think it's a difficult question because security can be on all layers of Odoo. You have the internal security, rights management, and I think you can do quite some things with that. If you look on a level deeper, you could go, okay, for example, with Fluvius, we're now working on single sign-on and also combining all the rights that are being defined in, for example, Azure, that they stream through to Odoo, and they are there automatically applied. And then on the third level for me, you really have the IT security, where you have the security risks on the platform, the libraries that you use that need to be updated. So I think, let's say with standard Odoo, you can do a lot, but if you go into these types of projects, you need to take it a bit further as a partner as well, and really adapt to the security policies of the company you are working with.
Next question is, it seems like the portal in Odoo are very useful tool for the public sector, but do you think that you have to add any changes or to make it better?
To make any changes on the portal?
In the future Odoo version, which change you would like to see?
Well, I think the changes that we did for some of our customers were to make it an even more complete 360 degrees platform. So of course Odoo has a lot of applications where you handle different types of documents, and on the platform you can already see out of the box, for example, your sale orders or your invoices. Something that we added, for example, was the document sharing functionality. So I think there are probably some more flows or types of records that you can have in your Odoo database that you would like to share with your contacts or your portal users. So there would be maybe a bit more flexibility that you can select in Odoo the model that you would like to share or not with some of your customers. That would be a great added value to make it even more flexible and a more complete solution.
Yeah. Or also maybe which fields from, let's say, a task that you want to show or not show on the portal.
So in the same row, what is your recommendation when changing the portal? Did you use website views or kept using the portal characteristics all through it?
I think what is important is that we always use as much as possible the building blocks that are in Odoo. So we use the existing portals and then we start working from there. Of course, it depends a bit on the case. If something, a requirement really diverges from the standard, sometimes it's better to search for another solution, but in this case we kept as much as possible to the basics of Odoo.
Thank you. How do you manage the storage document with the SH limitation?
Okay.
Just here. How are you managing the document storage with the SH limitation storage?
Yeah, so that is one of the reasons that we did not choose for SH here. Also because at the time they could not guarantee us that the data would stay in Europe, for example. So that is why from the start we chose for a dedicated server at another hosting provider. And right now we are working on the migration into the internal setup of Flavius.
We have enough time? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you
you.
for the speech.